Grammar, Episode 1, The Phantom Sentence. So today we're going to be talking about a lot of things, and most of them are going to be review. For instance, what we're about to talk about, which is the parts of speech. But some of these things will be things that are more difficult for you. Now, a lot of these things you may think, how am I going to need this? Is someone, when I go to my job, going to ask me what an interjection is? And no, probably not. Or what about a subject complement? Who needs to know that? Well, the truth is you may not need to know what a subject complement is, but it is very likely that in your future, especially since you're a 9th or 10th grader and we'll be doing this at least 2 more years, is that you will need to be able to write a paper using commas correctly, or be able to speak with correct grammar when presenting something. So even though you may not need to know the ins and outs of this part of grammar, you will need this foundation in order to make sure you use the bigger parts of speech and the larger issues that come with grammar, like writing papers or being able to just write something effectively without glaring grammar errors. And this is the foundation for that. So let's quickly go over some of these review items. Starting with a noun. A noun is a person, place, thing, or idea. So an Ewok would be an example of a noun. A verb, as I'm sure you remember, shows action, occurrence, or state of being. So force choke, that would be a verb. An adjective describes a noun. So if we had a scruffy Ewok, that would be an adjective describing the noun Ewok. An adverb can describe a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. So slowly and lots of ly ending words are adverbs. You can slowly walk. So that slowly is describing the verb walk, making it an adverb. Also words like now, describing when something's going on, can be an adverb. Pronouns take the place of nouns. So words like it or he or she are pronouns. They're less specific versions referring to more specific nouns. Prepositions are very important when we get into the more difficult parts of grammar. They show position. These are words like with and in. So you can be with a friend in a restaurant. They show your position. And conjunctions, very important. They join words, phrases, and clauses. So words like because and can be conjunctions. And finally, interjections. Interjections are emotional words inserted into a sentence. Words like no or hey. They kind of jump out into the middle of a sentence and are usually set off by commas. So, getting a little more in depth, we have more on parts of speech. Specifically verbs. Now there are 2 specific types of verbs we want to talk about today. First is an action verb. Remember that action verbs show action. Here's an example. So if we said the Star Wars kid deflected bullets, deflected is an action verb. Or the Star Wars kid jumped, jumped, again, an action verb, showing action in a sentence. That's different than linking verbs. So linking verbs just show a state of being or occurrence. Like Han and Leia are in love. Are is our verb there, but it does not show any action. It just links the subject, Han and Leia, to something in the predicate. They are in love. Now, conjunctions, there are also 2 types of conjunctions we want to talk about. First is coordinating. These are the conjunctions that you're used to, and, but, and, or, as well as a few others. The important thing to remember is that coordinating conjunctions join 2 things that are equal. They can join words, they can join independent clauses, but whatever the 2 things or more that they're joining are going to be equal. Subordinating conjunctions are the opposite. The 2 things they join will not be equal. You can tell by the word subordinating as if you were a manager at work and you had subordinates under you. Subordinating conjunctions make things unequal. This is usually joining an independent and a dependent clause together. And because it's going to be subordinate, there are going to be some different rules with grammar, especially with commas. So coordinating conjunctions, like I said, and, but, or. Some subordinating conjunctions might be because or if. There are different types of subordinating conjunctions. So moving on to parts of a sentence. So there are parts of speech, and these parts of speech can also form into a sentence and have different names for being in the part of a sentence. The two major parts of the sentence are a subject and a verb. Every clause must have a subject and a verb. Make sure you do not forget that. Not only does every independent sentence have to have a subject and a verb, but every clause has to have a subject and a verb. Remember that a subject is just the topic of your sentence, and your verb, whether it's action or linking, is what is connecting the subject to the predicate, or showing action between the subject and predicate, what the subject is doing. So, some trickier parts of a sentence. Direct and indirect objects. So bear with me here. I'm going to go over the definitions, then give you an example, and of course we'll be working on this in class. So first, our direct object. A direct object receives the action of the sentence. So if you have, this means it has to have an action verb to have a direct object. It answers the question who or what. So if you have an action verb, like jump, it's going to answer the question. Or perhaps a better example would be tricked. It could be something like he tricked Count Dooku. So tricked would be your verb, and it answers the question who, so it would be the direct object. Count Dooku would be the direct object. I'll give you a better example in a minute. An indirect object can only happen if you have a direct object, and it is going to receive the direct object. So it's going to answer the question to whom or for whom, or it could be to what. So let's do an example, see if you can get this. So first sentence, this is going to exemplify a direct object. Obi-Wan gave the lightsaber to Luke. So Obi-Wan is our subject. There's Obi-Wan. Gave is our verb, and what did he give? We gave the lightsaber. So that's our direct object. Obi-Wan gave the lightsaber. Now, if we rephrase this, we can put an indirect object in it. Now, even though we have Obi-Wan gave the lightsaber to Luke, Luke is not an indirect object because it has the word to in it. Obi-Wan gave Luke the lightsaber. In this sentence, Luke is the indirect object. So notice both of these sentences are saying the exact same thing. One is using the preposition to, and one is making Luke an indirect object. So you can do either one. You can always change an indirect object to use the word to or for, and that will make sense. So Obi-Wan gave the lightsaber to Luke, or Obi-Wan gave Luke the lightsaber. This one, the pattern is subject, verb, direct object. This one, you have subject, verb, indirect object, direct object. An indirect object will almost always come in between the subject and verb and the direct object. So the last thing we have to talk about today, compliments. And I don't mean we're going to compliment Leia on her hair, but actually we are going to compliment Leia on her hair, but don't let that confuse you. So a subject compliment, or really either of the compliments we're going to be talking about, basically rename whatever it is they're complimenting, goes along with it and renames it. So a subject complement can only be used if you have a linking verb. It is going to be very similar to a direct object, but instead of with an action verb and receiving the action, it is going to be what is linked to the subject of the sentence by the linking verb. So for example, Leia has great hair. This is a predicate nominative, which is a subject complement. Let me put the next one so you don't get confused. Leia is awesome is a predicate adjective. So you see both of these, the subject was Leia. In both of these we have linking verbs, has and is. In this first one, our complement is hair. and it's a predicate nominative because it's a noun. And our second one, our subject complement is awesome, and it's a predicate adjective because it's an adjective. So that's all these terms are referring to. It's predicate nominative if it's a noun, it's predicate adjective if it's an adjective. So subject complement, Leia has great hair, it is linking the subject Leia to the noun hair, or linking the subject Leia to the adjective awesome. And that's all a subject complement is. An object complement is a little different and a little more rare. You're not often going to have object complements. But here is an example. So an object complement, just like how a subject complement renames the subject, like this one, Leia is awesome, an object complement renames a direct object. So you have to have an action verb and a direct object in order to have an object complement. So Vogue is our subject, named is our verb, and our direct object here is hairstyle. Vogue named the hairstyle. But really you could almost also say that hair of the year is the direct object. Vogue named hair of the year. So these two basically rename each other, and they're basically equivalent, hairstyle and hair of the year. This is an example of an object complement. You can also, if you vote someone president, if you vote John president, then president and John, John is going to be your direct object and president is going to be your object complement. Alright, so make sure that you have that down as best as you can. Come in knowing as much as possible about this, and we will work on it in class.